Okay, so Dr. Jacobson was trying his best to cause a stroke, to produce a stroke. And there is a 50-minute period of unaccounted time. And the entire test, which was supposed to be 40 minutes, took 110 minutes. So now, had my brain been deprived of blood for 50 minutes, it would have been too great of a miracle to not have lost any brain cells or even died, or the stroke having occurred. And now all this was unnoticed to me, but I think what was happening is I was regaining consciousness, and Dr. Jacobson was again trying to produce a stroke. So he was repeating this a few times, but he finally gave up because he could not produce a stroke. And there were a lot of other outward signs of other injuries showing up on my body. With all the water, blood, and debris that were flowing down from the brain to the heart, blockages occurred in those giant veins between the brain and the heart. And as a compensation mechanism, the normally unseen veins in the upper chest became engorged and allowed for a bypass around the blockages. Additionally, swellings formed underneath the eyes, and this was from pressure backing up. Now, when the water was flushed up into the brain via the arteries in the left arm, water was also being flushed backwards up to the exit of the heart and the aorta. These regions were also suffering injuries. With a stroke, the injuries would be limited to the brain. But now there is aorta injury, heart injuries, and central vein injuries. The large quantity of water would also cause the entire the large quantity of water could also cause the entire body to swell and the kidneys to fail. By a miracle, and also because I was very physically fit and have experience with extreme and other challenging circumstances, the body fought off the stroke and defeated the expert Hopkins neurosurgeon. Dr. Jacobson could have still killed me, but it would have been something other than a stroke, and there would have been overt outward signs. So nearly 3 years later, in December 2015, a legally recorded phone call with Ms. Miller from Capital Imaging. She repeatedly tells me to file a malpractice action and complaints to the Physicians Board against all of them. The one thing that the medical providers don't admit to is malpractice, but here, to get out of jail, they seek to say it is all about malpractice. Ms. Miller's contact with me was to be limited to giving me a form to fill out and accepting my payment and giving me a receipt. I did not suffer any injuries from any of those actions. When asked if Dr. Jacobson was the supervising physician, and what I meant is whether he was that good Samaritan physician, she said she had to look it up because there are 5 physicians upstairs. I reminded her I was talking about February 15, 2013, and then she hung up. Dr. Jacobson was the only physician at that building for many years. It was only after his criminal offenses against me that he sold the Bethesda neurology practice to the Johns Hopkins Health System, and the other physicians also came on board. Dr. Jacobson was also named the director of neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins, not at Hopkins, at their Hopkins-owned suburban hospital. This weasel appears to be sheltering under the protection of this giant healthcare entity. I told Ms. Miller that my doctors, including cardiologists and neurologists, need my full medical history, and that the report Capital Imaging released about there being no complications could just not be true. Ms. Miller, without hesitation, yelled out, "You walked out of our office!" Now, Ms. Miller, who was very loud and aggressive until this point of the discussion, she literally meant that I should be fortunate that I walked out of their office because they were trying to kill or severely incapacitate. Now, because of her Sudden silence. I said, "I'm sorry," with the meaning of, "I don't understand. Could you please repeat?" As in, "Excuse me." She remained silent, and then I asked, I walked out of where? Then it sounds like the cat got her tongue, and you can actually hear her forming the escape. She has a very extended, "Did you?" And then adds in to say something like, "Say something when you left our office." I replied, "I contacted their office about a month following the incident." She quickly conceded, and it was Miss Miller in the early part of the same discussion who said that several emails were received. In no way did she mean, "Did I register a complaint?" She meant that I was left alive and not incapacitated. Ms. Miller tells me the procedure to get my medical records, and when I tell her that I already have that document and asked her to verify if it is the one that says electrically signed, now that is electrically, that is electrically. Normally the word is electronically signed. Okay, so she replied by saying she cannot speak to me until I am ready to have a rational adult conversation. Then when I asked about electrically, that is electrically, as in buzz, as in sticking your finger in the socket or something, electrically, she hung up. Okay, now what's going on is Dr. Athos is a radiologist that gives the interpretations for the MRI test, and he's also part of all of Capital Imaging's unlawful schemes. He is listed as the medical director, but he's physically in New York. So now initially Dr. Athos was out of the loop with regard to my matter. Someone else forged an interpretation and signed off as electrically signed by John Athos, board certified radiologist. It is common knowledge that the word is electronically. I thought for a long time that Mr. Papel, the technician who does not have good English skills, dummied up the report. But the error is too great, and this was not the work of Mr. Papel. The forged report was the work of Dr. Jacobson using dictation software. Dr. Jacobson is a surgeon, and it is surgeons who always write by voice because their hands are not free. The physician's version of this software recognizes medical words. The word electrically, that is ending in CALLY, is frequently used, most often with the ECG or the EKG for the heart test. Right, but electronically is just a computer term, and it's not part of the medical lexicon. So Dr. Athos would have to have some password, and when given to a computer by writing or by voice, would imprint his template signature, and that would already say electronically. There's no need for someone to do it additionally. But when Dr. Jacobson did it, he had to say it out. So, and then I only noticed the tip of the iceberg symptoms, and I went back to see Dr. Kulkarni about a month and a half later and reported there may have been some minor problems. Now, I use this Epic software, which is the top of the line software, and the test results was to be logged in when they received it. It was to be logged in by a clerical employee and placed into the appropriate electronic folder. Instead, when I went for the visit, at the beginning of the visit, you are sitting with the nurse for a few minutes, and the nurse could not find the report because it was not where it was supposed to be. But then when Dr. Kulkarni came in, she was able to access the report. And what she had done is she had placed it in some miscellaneous hidden folder. So obviously she was already, long before I came back to the office, obviously she was well in on the conspiracy. So when this dummied up report was given, it was not placed into the regular spot in the folder, right? Because so, and then so really, and so really, and what she also did at the end of the visit is she went and she took 20 minutes and she went through this elaborate process just to delete the fact that she ordered that MRI test. So literally she's trying to say crime. What crime? The MRI test never occurred. So if the MRI test never occurred, how could you say some crime occurred at the MRI place? So because of the software, she could not just go in and delete. She had to cut paste into an entirely new medical record, and that took her 20 minutes to do. So she deleted, and so in that way she got the order for the test deleted. But then when I was there, and then also in her Dr. Kulkarni's medical, now I do liken the actions of Dr. Kulkarni with the captain of a commercial airliner who's in cahoots with the hijackers. Dr. Kulkarni, in the physical exam column of the medical records, reported only a couple of sentences. It must be noted that throughout the report, the statements are very vague and not definite, except for this portion. It could be said that the short, brief statement hits a home run for Dr. Kulkarni's hijacker co-conspirators. It first states patient is in no acute distress, and this is a common non-specific statement. But the remainder of the statements are: he is alert, face is symmetrical, tongue is midline, gait is normal. That's all. That's all of the report of the physical exam. This is the precise report that is given by a neurologist that seeks to determine by physical exam whether or not a patient suffered a stroke. It's also referred to as a neurocheck. Okay, if the face is symmetrical, tongue is midline, and gait is normal, that's confirmation that there was no stroke. So she's just proclaiming there was no stroke, which, why would she have to proclaim there's no stroke? I mean, why, I never came in complaining about any stroke or any kind of serious problems. Now, when looking back at the full neurological exam visit from the first visit, findings about face being symmetrical and tongue position and midline are not parts of Dr. Kulkarni's neurological exam. Other neurologists may report on these things, but the issue is it was not part of Dr. Kulkarni's type of exam, and we want to know her motives for having these things placed in now. The final item noted is that the patient is alert. When looking for the word alert in the exam from the initial exam, it is said to be a notation of the level of consciousness. This kind of reporting was a standard component of the full exam, but when it is reported as part of a limited exam, it means that this was an area of concern. The level of consciousness represents the coma scale, but anyone who drives a third of the beltway to reach his doctor's office would not be anything other than alert, which means fully conscious. There is no value to this item on the records other than to state that the ones to which she sold for professional rewards, her patient and her professional opinion, she wants to say that they did not commit those offenses. Now, when I did, and during that visit, I only reported some very minor problems. That's all I noticed. But Dr. Kulkarni immediately said, "You probably misunderstood," which was really overkill. And then throughout the visit, she's squirming, physically squirming, and then she's pacing around the room. She's making noises with her mouth. She's pacing. She's sitting. She's getting up. She's extremely nervous.